Have you ever been invited somewhere and felt completely out of place? This next story I'm going to share with you is something from my past before Jesus came in and did something with me. I used to be a bartender at a country club, and the people that would come in and day out were actually members of the country club, and they were the only people that could be allowed into the restaurant. And one of the days after getting to kind of sort of know someone, I got invited over to a party over at his house. And I didn't have anything in common with this guy. This guy was a multimillionaire. Walking up the driveway, he had all of his friends over, and they were all multimillionaires. Walking up the driveway to his house, it looked like an exotic car showroom. I mean, there was just everything there. Walking into the house, I think the foyer of his house was as big as my 800 square foot apartment that I was living in. I was married, I had two small kids, we had one car between us. We were living paycheck to paycheck, and we were on government assistance. I felt completely out of place. I actually ended up stealing something from this guy and selling it at a pawn shop, just to kind of make a little bit of extra money. I feel terrible about it, and it's kind of a funny story, but I was completely out of place. And in this story, I think that this is where we see Judas in his life. Judas was with Jesus for 3 years. He knew who Jesus was. He was around him. He'd seen him do all these things, but Jesus for Judas was not in the right place. That relationship was something completely different to Judas. It's one of the reasons why we see Judas easily selling Jesus over for 30 pieces of silver. Jesus wasn't in the right place in Judas's life. I guarantee you, if my friendship with this other guy was of a little bit more importance to me, I wouldn't have felt out of place. I for sure wouldn't have stolen anything from him. You might have Jesus in your life, but is he king over everything? Is he in the right place? Or is he just somewhere in the back? In this story that we have read, I think this is where we find Judas. Jesus had invited him to be a disciple. He had poured so much into Judas. Even earlier that night, we see Jesus doing the ultimate act of service by washing his feet. See, Judas was in Jesus's life, but Jesus wasn't a top priority in his. That's why it was just so easy for him to betray him. For 30 pieces of silver, Jesus just was not king over Judas's life. And I wanted to ask you a question. Is Jesus a top priority in your life? Is he king over everything, that if something else pops up or gets in the way, that thing's gonna kneel to Jesus? Is Jesus king over your life? If not, today's the perfect day to make Jesus King of Kings and Lord of Lords in your life.